Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. Moth and Spark by Anne Leonard. This is a book that I discovered because I was aimlessly paging through the Overdrive collection for the public library system where I am. And this is a fantasy novel. And it's very much a fairy tale. Now, this isn't, as far as I'm aware, a rewrite of, the fairy tale of Thingy. But it very much follows the line of a fairy tale. It gets very dark and very grim in places. This is not a children's book. But what it does is it is the story of a prince who falls in love with a commoner, and they are married, and there are some adventures, and then they live happily ever after. So the book opens with Prince Corin. This is, I don't think, any particular reference to A Horse and His Boy, but you never know. And Prince Corin is out in the wilds of his country, and there have been some terrifying rumors and stories and ghost stories floating around among the lesser educated people of the land. And it turns out, after some sudden attacks and due consideration, that he realizes that indeed the Sarians, who are some sort of a savage, horrifying people with machines and a really genuinely horrible, vicious, evil culture, are coming to invade his country, which is called Caithnor, I believe. I couldn't tell you how it's actually supposed to be pronounced, because this is one of those place names that fantasy authors invent, and then you never know how they actually intended it to be pronounced. But where this book really opens is, because, I mean, the start of this, sure, is when he's up north and so on. But the prologue of this book is of him being grabbed by a dragon rider, because there are dragons and they have riders. And he's grabbed by it, and he's told that the dragons have a use for him. And some liquid or thing is dumped down his throat, and he's informed that when he's ready, he'll remember. And with that unsettling, unclear, deliberately vague, and terrifying thought, this book opens. And it hangs over your head throughout the book. This wondering why. Why do they want him? What do they want with him? What do the dragons want? Why did the dragon rider do this? It just sort of hovers there for a huge portion of the book, and I can't call it foreshadowing, because foreshadowing is when something is implied in the course of dialogue or plot or what have you, that something will be coming. This is not implied. This is a clear statement that something is coming. But it rests over top of this. The second major character, the second of our two main protagonists, is the commoner, Tam. And her father is an extremely famous and well-to-do and highly intelligent doctor. So, and her brother has married into the nobility. So she's not a commoner in the way that a prince falls in love with, like, the maid or something. This is somebody who has an education and capability to be an equal with the less well-off nobility. It's just that in terms of her rank, she could never expect to get anywhere close to the prince. But we open the book with her. We have the prologue, which is Corin being told the dragons have a task, and then the first chapter is Corin and the soldiers with him up north being attacked by Sarians, and the discovery that something is very, very wrong and that they have to head back. And then we get chapter 2. And in chapter 2, this is where we meet Tam, who is looking out of the window of the room that she is in at night, just staring out of the window into the darkness, and seeing a couple of men standing around outside in the dark and being thrown something by one of the young women that she is forced to room with in that particular wing. And while she considers it to be worth remarking upon, and she considers it to be something to be noted and that is noteworthy, she doesn't really make much notice of it, because in the way of things in books and novels and movies and everything is that the characters don't know that they're in a fantasy novel. They don't know they're in, say, a horror movie. So these things that we on the outside know are going to be significant, they have no reason to think they're significant. So she notices it, but puts it aside. A putting aside that does come back to haunt her later. And it's after that we get the first really, really horrifying thing in this book, which is when a man dies of poison in front of her. And it's a particularly horrifying poison that causes a person to die in incredible agony. And as she stands in front of him, she sees a cloud of black moths fly out of his mouth that no one else sees. And that's when we first discover that there's something more remarkable about her. And as the book continues, she and the prince fall in love, and they fall in love very, very fast. It's even made clear in the book when she thinks to herself about what her father would say if she said to him, "Yes, I met the prince 5 days ago and now we're married." And the fact that they're married comes about very intriguingly, because the country is invaded and she's a commoner. She can't marry the prince. He knows it, she knows it, everybody knows it. Her sister-in-law, her brother's wife, who is minor nobility, takes it upon herself to not only remind Tam that having an affair with the prince is an incredibly foolish thing, but when she goes to meet with the prince, tells the prince several times, "You can't marry her, what are you doing?" And that's where this is such a this is very much a fairy tale. They fall in love and are married within 5 days. That he is chosen by dragons to free them, and and she's able to, with her own magical abilities, finds herself able to figure out a way to keep him from dying, even though the only way to free the dragons ostensibly would be for him to effectively let something that was trapped, that this thing that was kept trapped needs to feed, and if he's the one to wake it, then he'll be basically eaten by it. The thing is that all of this, it happens in so short a time, and so it really, this is not a book that you go to because there's vast amounts of realism in this. The only thing that really feels real in this, that has sort of that particular kind of realism, as far as their relationship goes, is that artificially enhanced, not artificially, but an enhanced connection between two people where the situation between them has led to them having to trust each other, having to know more about each other faster because of the situation that they've been in, which causes them to trust each other more. And I'm actually very, very impressed with the book in that Anne Leonard makes this romance feel real. She makes it feel like it follows a reasonable arc. That the prince being, that the prince is attracted to Tam. Corin is attracted to Tam for the really, the much repeated trope of the only woman who doesn't, bow and scrape and tug her metaphorical forelock because he's the prince. And it's an old trope, but it's really, really well handled. And these dark and terrifying moments in this, these moments when Tam sees that one man die so horribly, these moments when she and the prince see into the depths of the other world. One of the conceits of this is that dragons are in fact only appear to us as dragons because the part of them that is dragon is the only part that has actually entered into the reality that we see in the book, that there is more to the dragon that is hidden in another level of reality. And when she and the prince see into that level of reality and they see horrifying things there and terrifying things and something dark that is looking back at them, these are very, very well handled, and they are dark and they're scary, and this is not the world's greatest creative new book ever. What this is it takes all of these tropes about princes marrying commoners. It takes the tropes about other levels of reality and how they impinge on our own. It takes the tropes about what makes a good king and a bad king. It takes the tropes about how madness is not necessarily just madness, but is an impingement of an alternate reality into our own. And it takes all of these and it weaves them together extremely well. And it's not that it's not that anything in this book is brand new. It's not that anything in this book is something that you've never seen before. What we have here is just a really, really skilled use of all of these bits and pieces that you recognize from everywhere else, and strung together into a romance and an adventure, and I think that this is a really, really quite an excellent fantasy novel. It's not sword and sorcery. It's fairy tale, but it's a fairy tale that you won't have heard before, that is just constructed out of the pieces of other fairy tales. And it's not that long, so hey, if you have free time and stuff, it's worth looking at. So thanks everybody for coming, and I will see you next week.